I had a professor in college who, remember he looked at some work I had done and he said, "Oh, that hits me in the nose," and it was just something that was super bright and like right in your face. And ever since then, I just know like that's kind of the key factor with any piece. It's got to have one element that just kind of hits you in the nose. Oh yeah, this one was a variety of different markers and I think a bunch of collage pieces. So like there's colored vinyl in there, and then there's like printed materials there that I've glued.
There's a lot of texture going on there, and mirrors is definitely an element that's a through line, with your work. Like you got a mirror on this piece too.
Oh yeah,
just a little one up there.
When it comes to symbolism, like caution symbols are something I'm obsessed with.
That's another thing. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Creative Freedom Universe. Here we like to interview different creators, talk about their process, talk about, just their ideas on how they approach their artwork. I have here with me today Jonah Haug. He is a mixed media artist and graphic designer and also a sign production specialist. He earned his graphic design degree from ISU in 2019. There, he learned how to delve deeply into the abstract expressionism that you see him do, symbolism, contemporary art, and just a whole lot more. Man, your work blows me away, man.
Yeah, appreciate that, man.
It's beautiful. It's amazing.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. It's always interesting just hearing what other people have to say about my art and kind of their interpretation of it. So.
What are some of like the craziest interpretations you've seen people have? Like some people just jaws drop when they walk by.
It's kind of interesting to watch people's just first reaction, because sometimes you can tell it's not for them. Okay, that's all right. But then sometimes people really light up, or even I've had like little kids just say like. I've had one girl just comment on my entire booth and just said, it's overwhelming, It's like, okay, I guess it kind of is. That's what I'm going for.
Has anyone like ever cried or anything?
Believe it, I've not brought anyone to tears yet, but if I do that, I'm doing something right,
And like, what about like, in terms of what emotions can they like, have you seen some of them feel? I mean, not every piece of yours is like a happy piece. Some of it's like a feeling of anger or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I had one piece that was bright red and said, "You never read." It was a piece of collage that I found. And I remember I sold that to a college student who said it was like, that's just me before I take a test every time. It's like, and it was just like this whole piece of artwork shaming you for not reading something. Yeah. And it was, it was definitely thought-provoking for him at least, so it's different connections people can make.
And like, has your art ever like pissed anyone off or anything? Like,
I think it's a little bit. I've certainly just the way I both like my art itself and kind of the way I display it. A lot of the time when I was first starting to do art festivals, I didn't have the greatest booth set up, so I'm just kind of setting crap out on the floor and just leaning it up haphazardly, whatever way I can. So there was a lot of that, and I think you see some of the way that a lot of other artists handle themselves. It's like there's a lot more consideration sometimes with how you display everything and all that. And I feel like I wasn't quite up to par, but
So we actually met at an art show.
Yeah.
It was the Iowa Pop Art Festival. It's a super dope event, only once a year, and I've been to 2 of them now. How many have you been to?
I think I've done it 3 times.
3 times?
Yeah.
Dope. Yeah, I met him at that show. Nick, hosts that. Mm-hmm. Do you know what's his last name?
Nick Thomas.
Nick Thomas, yeah.
Puts it together.
He's great. Only Iowa artists at that show. Like there's no out of state artists, nothing like that. Only Iowa talent, and that's all the way from the music down to the vendors to the food to like every component of it. So super dope show. And I met you there, and that's all the way in
Cedar Rapids.
Cedar Rapids.
Yep.
Nubo City Market, sometimes where they like to hold it, but I love going down there and doing that show, and they always have dope talent. And so we met at that show, and by then your booth setup was already pretty legit looking. Like that definitely wasn't your first show.
Oh yeah, definitely. I started out, I think it was the Octagon Art Festival in Ames. I think I did that first year. It was in 2019, so like right when I got out of school. And that was kind of interesting experience. I remember I had a bunch of like paper mache collage sculptures that didn't really withstand the rain that happened that day. So it like reactivated the glue and all that, and I just kind of had to wait for them to dry. But everything was fine, and they went really well, and I ended up doing it again in 2021. Skipped a year for the pandemic, but that was a good experience. But I had a professor that kind of encouraged me to participate in that festival because I had been doing artwork I've done it since I was a little kid, but really in college is when I started focusing more on kind of like a lot of the collage and stuff that I do a lot more, and a lot of the sculpture building elements kind of came about when I was still in school.
And now you almost combine the two of them together, of like the sculptures with the canvases, with the collage. Like it's
exactly, yeah.
You do a lot of mixed media work, which I'm always a huge fan of seeing someone attempt to do something like that. You know, art is so subjective, like it's hit or miss, you know, and you know, I've even encountered people that didn't understand this art. Like, let's say the art that I own of yours, it might be on my wall or whatever it might be. And I'm just like, that it's just so open to interpretation, because to me, this is like the dopest, you know, art, some of my favorite art that I own. So, yeah, man, that's a cool story. Like, you started when you were little, but when did you like first start calling yourself an artist? Gave yourself that label, I guess.
I guess I've always kind of aspired to call myself an artist. Growing up, my dad was an artist. He did like a lot of oil painting and colored pencil work and stuff like that. So I kind of watched him growing up try and get his own artwork out there, and he created a lot of bigger pieces and things like that. So I kind of always had the idea of what I wanted to be, but it really didn't start taking myself seriously, I guess, as an artist until somewhere in kind of into high school around that time. But ultimately, as I still wanted to get a job where, I could, was something I could do for a living. So I went into graphic design.
Can you talk about like your day-to-day like job a little bit? Like you're assigned production specialist, is that?
Yep, at Sigler Companies in Ames. I work with a big giant printer and print on adhesive vinyl that we apply to substrates to make a sign, and then we also do like decals, stickers, and stuff like that. So that's a really interesting field of work, and it also gives me a lot of scraps of material. You just all sorts of material just gets thrown away that I get my hands on, so that keeps me going.
That's a dope perk. So you're saying that they give you some of their like materials that
all any of the scraps that's going in the trash is fair game. So I grab all that. I've been making like lots of little tiny pieces out of little tiny scraps and things like that. If it's not big enough to make a sign, it's just going in the trash.
So what are some different things that like you've, I guess, recycled from that place?
Oh man, any number of things. I mean, from like printed materials, like colored vinyl. A lot of this entire sculpture right here was made out of like just old sticker material. And it just kept putting it on there until it builds itself up. It's had a lot of fun with that. And then with just the substrate. So like instead of just using canvas, this one right here is aluminum. Just an aluminum sign blank that we weren't going to do anything with, so painted on it, and a lot of like metal and stuff, plastic and materials. This one right here is PVC, so it's like plastic, a little softer than wood, so you can carve right into it and cut holes in it and just kind of do whatever you want. So have a lot of fun with that for sure. I started to realize, as I was creating a lot of pieces and kind of comparing them to each other, like the one common factor there was they're all just squares or rectangles or some variation thereof. And it's like that's kind of boring after a while. So I wanted to find a way to make it more variation. Everything's a different shape. And the PVC materials really allowed me to do that with being able to cut it into different shapes. And the spikes coming out of the corners was a good way to kind of take a canvas that's still square and, somehow, make it pop out a little bit more.
That when did you start doing that like 3D kind of stuff on pieces?
That originated from my senior project in college. I did a massive sculpture. It was made out of a cardboard box and it encapsulated a computer monitor. And the computer monitor was displaying artwork, abstract artwork that I had made, taking pictures of the sculpture. It was like self-referencing itself, like, and it was a real complicated piece of artwork. But yeah, that thing was made of a bunch of 3D spikes with mirrors attached to them and all sorts of crap, and it was just a whole big project. So I just kind of kept doing it.
So we were touching on this one a second ago, but what's the name of this one here?
This one right here is called "Thank You for Your Business."
And why did you name it that?
I think it very literally, there's a piece of collage on there that says "Thank you for your business." But why I named it that, I honestly couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
It kind of just came about being named that, I guess. I know it's one I definitely always bring to shows because it's really eye catching, and it's a big giant. I mean, it's super heavy. It's all weatherproof, this thing can get wet and everything.
Wow.
So there's no worrying about it getting wet or anything.
So you were just saying, like, you didn't necessarily know why you named it that other than that it said that. Do you find yourself sometimes just like not necessarily knowing why you're doing something on a piece, but you're just doing it because later it might be up for more interpretation because you're just
absolutely
adding some randomness to it and stuff?
A little bit. It's kind of that element of, I don't even know what this means to me necessarily, but I feel like it's still worthwhile enough, and kind of interesting just when you take the phrase, "Thank you for your business," out of the context that it originally was. This would have been on some sort of sign that said "Thank you for your business." At the end of the day, that's just a nice thing to say to somebody that's a customer. Well, this is something that my theoretical customers would see, people looking at my art, and they're going to see "Thank you for your business." That's, kind of a little tongue-in-cheek mentioning of, I'm trying to sell this thing to you.
It's kind of ironic that way.
Exactly.
So you made this one in 2020, right? Mm-hmm. All right. So like what components, there's a lot going on there. What's going into making that piece? You touched on it a little bit.
Yeah.
With kind of the stuff that you're wrapping around on it.
Mm-hmm. This one started as it was a medicine cabinet attached to the wall, took it off, and it was just kind of an empty rectangle basically, but there was kind of an interior space to it. So I wanted something that was like fully 3D, as if it was just a sculpture you can hang on the wall. So that's kind of what I did with this. And so other than the 3D parts, there's also the mirrors, which I think are really important. I was really into the mirrors when I first got into kind of making these sculptures, just because I had that computer monitor and I wanted like the reflections to show up on the mirrors. So the mirrors looked at the monitor and kind of reflected off each other. So this one kind of does the same effect, but usually it's, the mirrors are pointed in a way so that they're pointed at the art piece itself. So it's like you kind of get more for your money as far as the artwork goes,
mirrors is definitely an element that's a through line, with your work. Like you got a mirror on this piece too.
Oh yeah.
Just a little one up there. So that's another thing I've seen. Do you remember, like, I know this was all the way in 2020. Do you remember like the head state you were in, or like, were you listening to like music when you're making it, or like, is there any sort of like ritual that goes into like getting you in that mind state to like make that?
I'd say I definitely listen to a lot of music when I work. That's a must when it comes to just the process. This one I spent a lot of time on, which I'd say is more unusual for me. I usually try get it out, out onto the whatever's going to happens, and not try and linger on it too much. But this one really took some time just because of just building it up, the material, and seeing which direction it went. But
how long do you think that took you? And was that one of the pieces that's taken you the longest out of all of your catalog of pieces?
I'd say it's taken me I spent more or less about the whole year on it.
Damn.
I worked on it slowly throughout the year, adding pieces to it, and I've had it ever since. So it's definitely a staple of my booth. It's a difficult one to try and sell to somebody because it's just really heavy.
Yeah, because I could see that logistical aspect coming up there.
Oh, absolutely.
I still think that the right person's gonna love that thing. With that aside, because that's part of what makes it cool, is it's 3-dimensional and everything. My next question is, what was it like growing up? Kind of getting into your origin story a little bit, like, what was it like? You grew up in Council Bluffs, but
growing up was just fine in Council Bluffs. I grew up a lot watching my dad, do art, and I learned how to draw at a pretty young age, as like stick figures, stuff like that, and it was definitely something I was known for. I remember in elementary school of drawing and things like that.
Really? So you were already making people drawings and stuff? That's dope. Do you plan on staying in Iowa and stuff? I know that's where you been, but
yeah, I think I'll end up staying in Iowa. Just that's where my family is, and nothing wrong with Iowa, that's for sure.
When did you start making art more consistently and on a regular basis? Because right now, I'd imagine you probably in the studio cooking every day at this point.
Yeah, definitely. There was a certain point where I started to be more prolific, and I think it goes back to in high school. I remember my senior year, I spent a lot of time on one drawing. It was pencil. I had a 0.3 millimeter mechanical pencil, so it was as thin as a hair, and it was doing this really complex drawing of a scientist guy with all these wires, and he's building himself into a robot, and it was super detailed. Never finished it, and in the process I kind of burnt myself out creatively, just because it was all this time and effort into something, and it's I think I did the drawing on 20-pound copy paper, nothing special about it. So ultimately I didn't want to just kind of do that again, and that kind of scared me away from art as a whole. So it wasn't until I kind of wanted to do the opposite of that, because I was I was never going to get anything done if I work like that again. So I kind of changed my process from being really meticulous to being more just get it on to the canvas, or whatever you're going to do, just make it happen so that it's finished and out there in the world,
Do you when you finish a piece nowadays, do you immediately drop it and showcase it to the world, or do you have a rollout schedule and you've got stuff that you're sitting on? How does that work exactly?
Oh, it's far from the schedule, but there's
okay.
There is a bit of a process to it, yeah. And I tend to kind of drop a piece as soon as I've declared it's finished. It's naturally I want to get it out there as soon as possible. So I usually don't sit on something too long. But there's always something else in the works. I'm usually sitting on top of a good couple of projects at any one point in time, and kind of spread out my attention like that, which I always find is a good process. And one eventually gets to the point where it's finished, and then I'll just say I'll just get it out there.
Yeah. When do you know when a piece is done? Like, is it a certain feeling?
It's a certain feeling. It's definitely something that it's hard. It's different for every piece. It's sometimes it's over just when I've stopped working on it long enough. I've set it down for a couple of weeks, and then I'll just be like, okay, well, I guess it was done this whole time. So I'll have work that ends up, in my booth at a show that I've never signed before because I was never quite ready to make the commitment, but I was.
But somebody wanted it type thing? You said your dad, like, was he an artist or did he just like help you with art? Or like how?
He's an artist himself. He still is. But I remember growing up, there's a distinct point in time in his career as an artist where he was really trying to get out there. He had his own studio at in Omaha, and was kind of trying to show his artwork at different places. And he was working on a lot of big pieces of artwork then that. It was interesting to see just because, it's not exactly an easy process to get out there and show your artwork. And he kind of got burnt out on it after a good couple of years just because it's a lot of time and money and expense, especially when you have a family. But it was definitely still inspiring though for me as a kid because I knew that's kind of what I wanted to do was to make artwork and, just show it to other people and, get it out there in any way I could. So
he's one of your creative influences then. So like, are there any other people you're looking up to creative influence wise, like other artists that you're like, this painter, like he did things really cool. Like,
I took plenty of art history classes when I was in college and I learned a lot there. To say that there's like one particular artist that really gets, that I don't really have really any that I off the top of my head, just because I try not to put too much focus on like admiring one artist so much that next thing you know, you're just doing, you're just going to copy his
style or something. Yeah.
So I don't like doing that. And but it's at the same time, you got to know what's been done before you go out there and start trying to do stuff that nobody's done before. So it was definitely good to have experienced those classes and all that. But yeah, it's hard to tie down one specific influence.
So you got to learn the rules before you can break them then.
Precisely. Yep.
Just like with other crafts and skill sets and stuff. So it's cool to know that like so much of this is universal. I think back to the point of what we were saying, like I was asking, like, was your dad an artist? And I kind of want to take that question back because I almost believe that like everyone is an artist. Mm-hmm. And it's all about like, to what degree and level are you going to kind of put that into practice? But I think that like we're all obviously creative when we make like creative choices like on the daily. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think everyone's an artist?
Yeah, I think everyone's an artist, to some extent, and everybody has their own tastes and how they choose to aesthetically bring their world together. It's up to them. So it's interesting to see what everybody's just the way they would decorate a space or
like what their outlet is.
Yeah,
and the different mediums and
precisely. So. I think, everybody is an artist to some extent. That's for sure.
So I kind of like said in my introduction, some of the elements that are in your art, like the abstraction and, abstract expressionism, symbolism, and so on. Am I getting all of these like terminology correct? Like I didn't go to art school or nothing. Like what would you say is like your art style and how would you classify yourself as an artist?
Oh, yeah. It's always difficult to get a nice classification there, but that's why I always say mixed media. It's a really broad category, mainly in the fact that I'm not narrowly pursuing just one medium, doing everything in oil paint or everything in, pencil or whatever it is. Because that was something I watched my dad do. He was very much committed to one medium at a time. So I was always like, well, what if I just, didn't hold myself back from the limitations of this medium and just used whatever I could get my hands on, kind of. There's like a variety of ways to go about it.
Yeah. What are some like tools that you find yourself like using in your workshop, back at home? Like, are there certain brushes that you gravitate towards, like certain supplies, like must need supplies that you always use? I know you like mess around with like reflective tape and stuff and all sorts of weird stuff. So what are some of those like tools?
Yeah, there a lot of fun materials that I get from work, like the reflective tape and things like that. Like colored vinyl is a lot of fun to work with. But I use a lot of like Sharpie markers, and then or like just an ink pen and then spraying it with alcohol. That's a big technique I use. And then when it comes to like stuff like brushes, I'm absolutely opposed to buying any brush that's like kind of expensive or even relatively expensive. I buy the cheapest ones possible because they're just going to get ruined by me like leaving them without cleaning them or something, and they just always dry up. So there's it's not always about like having the exact brand name of the best pencils or the best whatever your supplies that you're using. I always find like people can get really tied up trying to make sure they have the right, watercolor paint for whatever they're trying to do. And sometimes it just doesn't matter that much what you use to accomplish it, So I try and take some of the pretension out of the use of materials as a whole.
I like that. It's kind of like, the analogy, like, you could, if you're playing basketball and the other team, they all got nice new sneakers, and your team, all their sneakers are like used, beaten up. But like that doesn't mean that team won't win just because the other team's got
exactly.
Like that's a very small, if anything, differential involved. And like, I don't know. I feel like it's all about the practice and everything else that goes into it. It's not necessarily like the performance of whatever technology you might be using or materials you might be using.
Precisely. Yep.
I think to some extent too, without having all of like the nice things or everything at your disposal, there's almost like a curation in there of like, it's forcing you to use maybe tools that you wouldn't normally have used, or it's forcing you to stay within some sort of guideline that's, fundamentally like changing the nature of like what that piece would have been if you had all the tools at your disposal. Like,
exactly.
So I don't know. I think it just leads to creativity either way. Behind us and surrounding us, we've got a lot of your pieces here. How many like pieces do you think you've made like in your lifetime? Like, it's hundreds, right?
Oh, I tried to put a good number on them once. Hundreds. Yeah, for sure.
How many like this year?
This year, it'd be hard to say, but I mean, I consistently put them out or at least I'm always got something in the works. So I'd say I'd be getting close to 20 or so this year.
Yeah.
And the sizes are also vary too. I've been doing a lot of like really small ones, and then some bigger ones I've been doing in the last few years.
What do you like this year, just looking at this year, let's say, are you doing mainly like small pieces and big pieces, or like some medium, or are you doing like, are you noticing that you're driving towards like only big ones this year? Like, what is that like?
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time focusing on, or at least the last 2 or 3 years, it was about the bigger pieces that I wanted to do some more of those, but really it's been about the medium sized to small ones. I just did a art festival in Omaha this summer, and that was the size that I sold the most of was just medium and small. Anything large is kind of a big sell. So
it's more of an ask.
Exactly.
Especially to someone that might have just encountered you for the first time. So you were just talking about like you did the Omaha show. What are some other shows you've been doing? Or I know you have some of your stuff in the Ankeny Art Center right now.
Yeah. The Ankeny Art Center. I have my work hanging up in their gallery space there with another artist. And yeah, that was a great opportunity, especially where they hung the artwork, which is very refreshing. Was under the impression for some reason like, oh, I gotta like hang up this artwork and get, I have no idea what I'm doing. And as far as I would just start, putting them left to right, just whatever I grab is gonna go up there first.
Yeah.
But the curator there, she did a great job laying everything out, and it was just great to see everything like actually on a wall, with its own space, not crammed with a bunch of artwork next to it. And yeah, it's just a really good opportunity to get it out there.
So they made your life easier, and it sounds like that, they work with a lot of artists. So I guess that's good that they want to be like artist minded that way and make your life easier that way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You have some of your stuff, or have had some of your stuff in like coffee shops, things like that, right?
Yeah. It was the Morning Bell Coffee in Ames. I had my artwork up there a few years ago. And that was great to, again, just have it out in a public space, and just a good opportunity for exposure. So
was like the Ankeny thing that's going on right now, is that like your biggest public installation gallery that you've been part of?
It's the first time I've been out and that I've had an official gallery out.
Yeah.
My work out there. So it's a big stepping stone for me. And hopefully, in the future, moving forward, that's going to be something I'm looking at as other galleries that
More
I can
galleries and stuff
get into and things like that. So once you get into one, it's a good stepping stone for your next move.
This piece behind me, we were talking a little bit about the 3-dimensional component. Like, how are you getting that 3-dimensional thing on there? Like,
yeah. Usually I start by making just a 3-dimensional spike. Usually it's made out of like PVC or plastic.
Yeah.
And just kind of make the shape, and then I attach it. I used to use glue, but found the glue didn't really hold up to the elements very well. So I think with that piece that you're talking about, I think I nailed it onto it, and then I taped over the nails so you couldn't see them. That one I believes stapled on there, but I've been really leaning towards the hardware attaching instead of trusting glue anymore. So if it can be nailed onto that thing or screwed on somehow, I go for it. So it's not coming off.
Man, like, what about some of these other pieces here? Like, we were talking about some of the tools you use. Can you just like point out like some examples of like, here I used, this marker, and then here is where I like.
Oh yeah, this one was a variety of different markers, and I think a bunch of collage pieces. So like there's colored vinyl in there, and then there's like printed materials there that I've glued.
There's a lot
there.
of texture going on there, and I actually didn't. When I was looking at it through the picture, and we were talking about this piece one time, I couldn't even from the picture see all that.
Mm-hmm.
That's seeing this in person, all that texture is just crazy.
Oh yeah, there's just words that I've written, and then there's words that I've taken from collage in there. Kind of a variety of things, but it all kind of comes together,
How long did like that one take you, and what's the name of that piece?
This one is titled Zealot. And I can't say how long I spent on it. I know I didn't spend a super long amount of time on it, but something this big definitely takes a little bit. So it's not something I work. It's not like just one session of working on it. Maybe a day or two of kind of getting a section done and thinking about it and coming back to it.
And how did you know this one was done when it was done? Like, just a feeling, like we were talking about earlier. Just you're like, now it's done.
It's one of the that's the hardest thing to describe is when you know, but sometimes you just know. And this one, it hit a point where it's there. There's nothing more There's nothing more to say. Basically, it says enough.
This woman figure that appears in your work. Don't think I didn't notice that. Like this little lady right here. Mm-hmm. Who is she? I don't. Yeah. What's going on there?
That's just kind of a common like motif that I've been. I keep going to, and I'm not sure really why. I think it's more of more of like in symbolic kind of thing. It's not necessarily that it's any one particular person.
Yeah.
Because I don't use
a made up character.
Yeah, I don't have a model or a reference. And some of it comes from back when I was in college, I took a life drawing class, where you just draw the model and you're using like a pencil and graphite. And I just took that class just out of general interest and learned how to draw people accurately. And from there, it was just kind of a habit of kind of if I wanted to draw something, or you just start drawing a little head, and the next thing you know, you got a body and you got a person, and it's just kind of something I can draw pretty quickly.
How did you choose your name, Overvivid Artwork?
I think I originally picked that out of a random word generator. I was trying to just generate a bunch of text so I could print off a sheet of paper that's a bunch of text and rip it all up, and it would just be a bunch of nonsense. And I saw that and just one word, Overvivid, and figured that was a good descriptive phrase for my artwork, and it was a little easier to pronounce than my last name too, so I went with that.
And how many pieces has this female character appeared in of your pieces? Is it in a lot of them, right?
It's in a fair amount of them. And at this point it's I'd say it's, if you had to take my entire body of work and you divided it up into kind of different series, the ones with the female character would be a kind of its own series at this point. Just like the ones with that are cut out of the PVC have a good body of those that it's a series in and of itself. And then it kind of, there's the 3D spikes, poking out. That's another series there. Yeah. So, and then of course there's kind of the crossover of when I'm doing the 3D spikes, plus then it has the person in it. So.
And then just underline with them all, the very vivid colors, obviously.
Precisely. That's kind of the unifying theme there that kind of brings everything together.
Your color choices are just so crazy, man.
Yeah.
I'm just such a sucker for color. Anyone that follows kind of my brand and stuff knows that. And that's, I think, one of the first things that drew me to yours was just your choices of colors.
Yeah. That goes back to I had a professor in college who, remember he looked at some work I had done and he said, "Oh, that hits me in the nose," and it was just something that was super bright and right in your face. And ever since then, I just know that's kind of the key factor with any piece. It's got to have one element that just kind of hits you in the nose,
dude.
And usually that's the color of it is.
Well, that's exactly what's happening to me, man. Every one of these that I'm seeing is a banger. So. Good job.
Absolutely, yeah. Appreciate it.
What's your favorite piece in the room right now, and why?
One in the room. I would have to say it's tied kind of between Watch It Burn and Zealot. I'd say this one, because it has a much more involved background, and it's just generally kind of hard to do. Just the situation of it's not at any one point I decided it was going to look like that. It's kind of just the time-consuming process of starting in this section and just working your way out until you've kind of covered everything. And that's always it's the part I enjoy about it. But then sometimes you look back at it, it's oh boy, how am I going to do that again? That's a lot going on. So that's a good feeling I get from my own work that I like to get.
Is that how most of your pieces go? As you're making it, it's shaping itself?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
There's very little of a finished idea in my mind, and then just making it happen on the page. It's more of just getting started and seeing where that goes.
Yeah. So you're not necessarily sketching it on a piece of paper first.
Oh,
or anything.
Absolutely not. No. Yeah. That's definitely not my part of my process anymore.
Is there anything else you wanted to say on that last chance of engagement piece? I kind of skipped by that a little bit. We talked about, the corners of it and stuff. Anything else to say about that one?
I'd say with that one, I think the title was kind of something I liked about that piece, just because it's a pretty direct reference to like social media, and I'd sit there on Instagram like anyone else, where it gives you all these insights into your business and how much engagement your percentage is up this week or compared to last week and all this stuff. And all of that generally to me just gets to be kind of depressing when you get down to it, and really unmotivating to be like, oh man, if I don't post this week, then my engagement's down, or all this crap, and you got to follow it. Takes the
fun out of it almost.
It really
does.
Takes
the creative out of it sometimes when
precisely
you're so focused on the business side of it,
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I was going for with the title, like Last Chance for Engagement. It's
you were an art major. That's like quite the daring step, in my opinion. Like something that I almost wish I would have done myself.
Yeah.
But I just was, honestly, at the time, it was almost like a societal pressure of like, I don't know, like being an art major, like what if it doesn't work out for me? Like what if it doesn't pay the bills? And also like, how will it look? Like that I'm trying to treat this in like a serious capacity. I went to like a super academic high school, and for some reason they just like really like, it was a laughing stock of sorts of like, oh, you're an art major or something if you were, and what's your like thoughts on like the stigma of that, and like how did you make that jump and like actually like have the balls to do it?
Yeah, it was kind of a hard decision. I know my dad was a graphic designer, so I kind of had a picture of what that career path would look like for me. And I also wanted something, part of me wanted to, obviously pursue art, but I wanted something a little more marketable, I guess, with like as far as the skills I learned. So that's kind of what led me to graphic design. But as far as the skills that I've learned in graphic design, like I think those have been really valuable as for the artistic pursuits that I ended up going after. So it gives you a good skill set in a way, but it definitely doesn't have the big appeal of other majors as far as how much money you might make.
Yeah. But obviously it could also be kind of infinite as well, of like, it might not be a lot, or it could be, it could surpass what like a salary might do, because that's within a box. And whereas like kind of being your own entrepreneur, like running your own business, that could be, infinite potential for all we know, right? So I just love that like idea of it too, of like, it's that what if, it's that risk, but you got to risk it for the biscuit sometimes,
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it was definitely worth it.
One of the mini pieces I have of yours is called Help. It's a mixed media on 3mm PVC. Do you remember that piece?
I think so, yeah.
It's got like some like camouflage looking, like light blue, orange camouflage looking design on there. Yeah. And this is like a very bright orange covering the whole thing. Like orange to me, like the color of orange you used on that is just like so cautionary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's saying help, and that's the only thing that it's saying too. Like, do you remember that like symbolism behind that piece and like what was going through your head and stuff?
Not specifically. I'd say like when it comes to symbolism, like caution symbols are something I'm obsessed with.
That's another thing.
Is just crazy about them. So I think some of that was coming through, and I was probably thinking to myself, what could this say? If I had to sum it up all in just one word really quickly. I've always liked, the design of like symbols and things like that. So naturally, when I got into signage, that was the perfect relationship there. And it's like I have a stop sign hanging in my house, of all things. So just anything in the same way that I want my artwork to grab attention, there's literal signs out there that need to be made to grab your attention, like wrong way. You ever seen that sign? That's a great one,
Yeah.
It's classic. It's lets you know you're driving wrong way on the interstate, like
could save lives.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just a red background with white text.
Yeah.
Like that's a great way to start a painting, is red background and, white foreground, and just go from there. So
is this like, I've seen like these caution stickers even throughout your workshop and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely.
Post workshop pics. and we'll post pictures of your like kind of workshop on screen and stuff, because that's just super cool looking at almost how like just random everything is just how like everything, you can tell everything's got a place for you, but like the outsider walking in is going to be like, this is like some like mad scientist looking layer.
Yeah, that's the vibe I always talk about, is the mad scientist kind of situation where, yeah, it just seems to be anything that I'm using ends up covered in stickers and just like that. So yeah, it's just part of my aesthetic, I guess.
This piece next to you, the blue one.
Blue one, right?
Yeah, you talk a little bit about what went into that, and it's kind of similar to this one in terms of like, I feel like they're almost a set.
Yeah, these were done in a similar period of time, I think. But yeah, they're both done on like metal substrates that I got, and kind of just a variety of like a lot of illustration. I don't even think there's much collage in here, and yeah, I remember having a lot of fun with these here, because sometimes I tend to always have a collage piece. I think there's some some blue vinyl there and like the little collage piece right there. Yeah. So I try and mix a good amount of elements in there. And this one even has a little figure right there. So, yeah, it's kind of a mixture of things. It's always weird seeing something that I've sold, because it's just like coming back to something that
you haven't seen that
I forget about. It's like
in a while.
Exactly. Yeah, it's always a weird relationship, with stuff that's been sold like that. Yeah. So, but
is it sometimes hard letting go of a piece?
Absolutely. I've had that before, but I've also had plenty of people say like it's going to a good home and all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
nice thing. It's like I guess it's certainly better than it sitting in my garage or something. So.
Yeah, that one's fucking dope. Just the color choice and shit. I know it's another mini piece and. But just that kind of stuff, like I put that above my light switch, something that, it's just like, you don't have anything usually there. It's like, so those mini ones can go other places. And I just like that concept. What made you start wanting to do like mini pieces?
It was a mixture of just happen to have the materials there. There were scraps. Like we had a big, long, skinny piece of material, and like I cut it into, cutting that thing up, I can make 30 pieces out of it. It multiplies quickly. So it was kind of just a good opportunity, and I knew that a lot of people don't have a ton of money for abstract art, so it's been a great thing to have for
make it affordable too.
Yeah, and that's what I've always been all about, making sure things are affordable and not obnoxiously overpriced things. Like it's so. That was just a great way to get even more artwork out there to people. So
I try and do that with my brand too. Like, cause the more affordable it is, the more like bodies I could have it on it theoretically, of like the more universal it could be. And I like to make my thing for like everybody, like not just necessarily like that much of a niche demographic, but more so it could be like a kid, adult, really anyone. But
precisely, yeah.
What are like some of your long-term goals? We've talked a lot about your creative process and kind of how you got to where you were in life, but do you know like what's next? Like, what are your plans?
Yeah. I think after showing my artwork at the Ankeny Art Center, one of the women on the board there, she kind of gave me a really good rundown of what to do at this particular stage in your career, where you finally have at least the credibility of saying you were in an art gallery at least once, so you could maybe move. So looking at other art galleries to apply to and try and get into, because that's a process where they're a few years out. So it's more of a 5-year plan as opposed to what are you going to do, which I never really thought about my career in terms of what I'm going to do even next year. So 5 years is kind of a lot to think about, but
you could plan, but you don't know necessarily.
Exactly. You never know what's going to happen. Yeah. So, definitely I'm still going to be focusing on what I have been, but just trying to get out to more festivals and, any opportunity I can get there. So,
well, hey man, I really appreciate you coming on the show today, blessing us with your expertise, and thoughts. I've really enjoyed this. This is going to be really helpful to a lot of people out there, I think. Support local art in Iowa. If you live in Iowa like we do, there's a lot of amazing talent right at your doorstep. So just be on the lookout for it. Like, I hope to see you at more shows coming up.
Absolutely, yeah. There's tons of events out there, so
Love,
sure
man.
it. Follow me at Overvivid Artwork, and I'll just keep posting.
Is it just, where's the best way to find you? Is it like Instagram?
Instagram, yep.
Okay.
That's the only social media I really mess around with. So
yeah. Peace and love. Signing off.